In the flicker of candlelight, a child kneels before wooden saints, whispering secrets to carved faces that will never answer. Yet something inside her believes they're listening, breathing, caring. This is where it begins. The magnificent architecture of belief, built not from evidence but from need, hope, and the terrifying silence of an indifferent universe staring back. Faith. We wrap it in golden cloth, call it sacred, paint it in stained glass windows that fracture sunlight into impossible rainbows of meaning and purpose. But strip away the poetry, the ritual, the community warmth. What remains? Is faith humanity's greatest triumph, or our most seductive surrender to comfortable impossibility? Tonight, we descend into the labyrinth, where belief meets reality, where quantum uncertainty dances with ancient certainty, where the faithful and the faithless both tremble. The human brain, that 3-pound universe of neurons firing in patterns older than civilization, craves connection, meaning, the promise that suffering has purpose. Neuroscientists have mapped the geography of belief, specific regions lighting up like Christmas trees when processing religious experience, indistinguishable from patterns of delusion. The temporal lobe, hyperactive in epileptics who report divine visions. The same neural pathways that produce schizophrenic voices also channel mystical revelations. Does this prove faith is pathology? Or that consciousness itself is so mysterious that the sacred and the psychotic share the same neural real estate? In quantum mechanics, particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed. A truth so strange that even Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. The Copenhagen interpretation suggests reality doesn't exist until consciousness collapses the wave function. Perhaps faith operates in similar quantum superposition, simultaneously true and false. Ancient shamans knew what modern physicists rediscovered. Reality is far stranger than our senses suggest, full of invisible forces, parallel possibilities, interconnected mysteries. But somewhere between mystical insight and modern revelation, organized religion built walls around wonder, demanding unquestioning allegiance to specific, often contradictory, claims about existence. The Inquisition burned heretics for suggesting the earth moves around the sun. Today's faithful perform similar mental gymnastics, defending Bronze Age cosmology against telescopic evidence. Faith becomes delusion when it demands we deny direct experience, scientific observation, moral intuition, when belief systems require believers to betray their own reason. A mother watches her child die from treatable illness, told that prayer matters more than medicine. At what point does faith become a beautiful word for negligent homicide? Yet millions find genuine peace, purpose, transformation through spiritual practice. Are they all deluded or accessing something science hasn't learned to measure? The placebo effect demonstrates that belief literally changes brain chemistry, heals bodies, transforms psychological states. Faith, even false faith, produces measurably real effects. Indigenous cultures worldwide developed remarkably similar spiritual technologies, meditation, trance states, plant medicines, that consistently produce transcendent experiences across vastly different belief systems. Perhaps the specific content of faith matters less than the capacity for transcendence itself, the ability to experience connection beyond the narrow confines of ego. But transcendence and truth aren't identical twins. One can experience profound spiritual states while believing entirely fabricated cosmologies, moral systems, historical claims. The conspiracy theorist experiences genuine revelation, connecting seemingly random dots into meaningful patterns, even when those patterns exist only in imagination, not reality. QAnon followers describe awakening experiences, community belonging, sense of purpose in fighting perceived evil. Their faith transforms lives while being demonstrably false. This suggests faith's power operates independently of its truth content, a frightening realization for those who equate spiritual experience with factual accuracy. Carl Jung understood that myths serve psychological functions beyond literal truth, providing symbolic frameworks for navigating existence's deepest challenges and mysteries. The dying God who resurrects appears across cultures not because it happened historically, but because death and renewal form the fundamental rhythm of existence. Winter becomes spring, cells die and regenerate, civilizations collapse and rebuild. The resurrection story encodes universal patterns in human-scale narrative. But when metaphor hardens into dogma, when poetry becomes biology, when symbolic truth claims literal authority over material reality, wisdom transforms into delusion. The difference between healthy faith and toxic delusion lies in flexibility, humility, willingness to revise beliefs when confronted with contradictory evidence. Healthy faith remains open to mystery, while toxic delusion demands certainty, claims exclusive access to ultimate truth, punishes doubt or questioning. Consider the faithful scientist, Einstein, Newton, Mendel, who experienced the sacred through discovering natural laws, finding divinity in mathematics, chemistry, the elegant choreography of cosmic forces. Their faith enhances rather than contradicts empirical investigation, recognizing that reality's depth exceeds current understanding while respecting observable patterns and measurable phenomena. Meanwhile, fundamentalism in any form, religious, political, scientific, becomes delusion by refusing to acknowledge uncertainty, complexity, the possibility of being mistaken. The materialist who claims consciousness is nothing but neural activity practices faith as blind as the creationist denying evolution. Both reduce mystery to ideology. Perhaps the question isn't whether faith equals delusion, but which forms of faith serve life and which forms diminish it. Does your faith make you more compassionate or more judgmental? More curious or more certain? More connected or more isolated from different perspectives? Does it encourage you to develop wisdom, kindness, courage, or does it primarily offer comfort, superiority, escape from responsibility for independent thought? The most dangerous delusions wear faith's clothing while serving ego's agenda, justifying hatred, violence, willful ignorance in sacred language. Crusades, witch trials, suicide bombings, conversion therapy. History bleeds with faith, corrupted into delusion, love transformed into licensed cruelty. Yet the same traditions that birthed horrors also produced mystics, saints, revolutionaries who challenged oppression in their religion's name, finding divine imperative in justice. Francis of Assisi renounced wealth to serve lepers. Dorothy Day fed the hungry. Liberation theologians died fighting dictatorship. Faith became radical compassion. This paradox suggests that faith itself is neither inherently delusional nor inherently wise. It's a technology of consciousness that can be applied skillfully or destructively. Like fire, like nuclear energy, like genetic engineering, faith's power can illuminate or incinerate, depending on the wisdom and motivation of those wielding it. The mystic traditions, Sufism, Zen, Kabbalah, Christian contemplation, consistently point beyond belief toward direct experience, beyond doctrine toward immediate knowing. They treat faith as a doorway rather than a destination, a practice rather than a position, a question that opens rather than an answer that closes. Modern neuroscience validates their approach. Contemplative practices measurably increase empathy, emotional regulation, cognitive flexibility, the opposite of rigid delusion. But accessing these benefits doesn't require believing specific supernatural claims about virgin births, golden tablets, divinely dictated books, or exclusive salvation pathways. Here emerges a crucial distinction: faith as opening versus faith as closing, faith as inquiry versus faith as certainty, faith as expansion versus faith as contraction. The faith that says, "I don't know, but I'm willing to explore," differs radically from faith that says, "I know, and anyone who disagrees is wrong." Perhaps true faith begins where false certainty ends, in the space of not knowing that remains open to revelation while skeptical of manipulation. This requires extraordinary courage to release the psychological security of absolute answers while maintaining hope that existence has meaning, purpose, direction. It means distinguishing between the finger pointing at the moon and the moon itself, recognizing that all religious symbols point beyond themselves toward inexpressible mystery. The Buddha warned against taking his teachings as final truth rather than skillful means. Jesus spoke in parables to prevent literal-minded interpretation. Both knew the danger of crystallized wisdom. Yet human nature craves solid ground, clear instructions, unambiguous authority, especially during uncertainty, trauma, rapid change that overwhelms cognitive processing capacity. Fundamentalism flourishes during cultural transition periods, when traditional meaning-making structures collapse, leaving populations vulnerable to charismatic certainty peddlers. Cult leaders exploit this vulnerability by offering seemingly sophisticated answers to complex questions while demanding surrender of critical thinking in exchange for belonging. But legitimate spiritual wisdom operates differently. It increases rather than decreases capacity for independent judgment, personal responsibility, ethical sophistication. True teachers point students toward their own inner authority rather than demanding external submission. They seek to create more teachers, not more followers. This suggests a practical test for evaluating faith claims. Do they enhance or diminish your capacity for wise discernment, compassionate action, authentic relationship? Do they connect you more deeply with reality or encourage escape from it? Do they foster growth or stagnation, courage or fear, love or conditional acceptance? By these criteria, much that passes for faith reveals itself as delusion wrapped in religious vocabulary, offering false comfort while promoting actual harm. But by the same criteria, authentic spiritual inquiry emerges as perhaps the most practical activity possible, developing wisdom to navigate existence skillfully. The conspiracy theorist and the fundamentalist share common ground. Both prefer simple explanations over complex realities. Both resist evidence that challenges cherished beliefs. Both project meaning onto randomness, agency onto coincidence, intentionality onto natural processes. The same pattern seeking that produces genuine insight also generates elaborate fantasies. Distinguishing between them requires cultivating discernment, the ability to hold multiple perspectives simultaneously, to recognize the difference between correlation and causation, between intuition and wishful thinking. This brings us full circle to the quantum realm, where consciousness and reality interpenetrate in ways that challenge both materialist reductionism and supernatural superstition. Perhaps faith's highest expression isn't belief in specific doctrines, but trust in consciousness itself, the mysterious capacity for awareness that makes any knowledge possible. Trust that existence is meaningful enough to warrant careful investigation, compassionate enough to deserve ethical commitment, mysterious enough to remain humble before its depths. In this light, faith becomes not the enemy of reason, but its deepest foundation, the bedrock assumption that reality rewards honest inquiry with genuine insight. So ask yourself, does your faith make you more awake or more asleep? More free or more bound? More human or less? The answer may be the most honest prayer you'll ever offer.